Hello, fellow hacks, and welcome back to the Classroom Hacks YouTube page. If you're watching this video, this is for the newest section to our page titled Classroom Concepts or Classroom Projects. On this particular video, we're going to cover the first classroom main project that we address in my class, which is the personal narrative. Now, just to give some background into what this section is going to entail, is basically covering larger conceptual projects that we tend to build to throughout the semester. I teach an English class, and so we tend to have anywhere from 4 to 6 major projects that I try to incorporate depending on the length of my semester. So depending if I have only a 5-week or an 8-week class, I might only get to 3 or 4 of the projects. If I have a 12 or a 16-week class, then I might get to 5 or 6. I usually try to provide adequate time to build up ideas and to give discussions and give examples and lessons in length so that students have at least a better context of what each primary concept is about and what goes into it. And then I give them adequate time to get drafts in and then to complete the actual larger assignment. And so typically the 6 assignments that I tend to work with are the personal narrative, the exploration project, analysis, argumentation, evaluation, and proposals, depending on which level I'm teaching, whether it's 1101 or 1102, which are both introductory. 1102 tends to focus a bit more on research, and we try to go to the furthest end of the rhetorical spectrum with the proposal, which is a call to action. But these concepts, along with a group project concept, are different types of videos that we'll discuss in this particular section. And so, like I said, this is the lead-in for the first concept or the first classroom concept that we'll cover, and that is the personal narrative. Now, just some background on the personal narrative for my class. Basically, for this assignment, I allow my students to tell me about a backstory of their own origin story, if you will. And the primary entry points or points of focus that they can address are a person of influence, someone who has either influenced them positively or negatively. I like to use both positive and negative sort of influences, as I feel the personality traits and the people who we become are oftentimes more developed based on our failures than our successes, primarily because I feel we learn more from failure just as much as we learn from success. They can also have the opportunity to talk about an event that was significant to them, a personal interest that they have or had growing up, or they can talk about an ongoing sort of interest that they still hold very close to them, that they have an affinity for. And with this particular project, initially, the departments, when I first started a decade ago, wanted the students to only focus on how reading or writing impacted them. However, I found that that was a little myopic and a little narrow in its focus. And so I expanded on that to include personal interests, people of influence, communities, religion, whatever that particular sort of influence was for them, because I realized that not everyone had the same sort of childhood growing up, and not everyone had the same opportunities or materials when it came to reading and writing. So have them discuss other things that could have influenced them growing up. I also give them the opportunity of either writing an essay or developing a PowerPoint or video with some sort of audio component. Obviously, it's a composition class, so they do their fair share of writing, but as our times have progressed and we've kind of transitioned over to sort of multimodal forms of projects and multimodal forms of critical thinking and developing different sorts of arguments and rhetoric and different sorts of projects in general, I like to give them the option with each of these different concepts to develop a project, not just an essay, which is also always going to be available, but for them to get to dabble in maybe different projects or different types of modes of thinking that would be outside of an essay. Because if they can still tell a great story, if they can still do a critical analysis, if they can still develop a clear proposal that doesn't necessarily have to be in an essay form, that still generates certain types of thinking, it still requires them to problem solve, and it probably elicits a variety of different critical thought points throughout the process outside of just the argument or the essay structure that they would normally be accustomed to in an English class. This way, they get to do all sorts of different kinds of research. They do different sorts of organization and development with these various projects, and it allows them to be creative and allows them to experiment in different ways that go beyond just an essay. So for this particular project, like I said, I like to give them the option of either developing an essay or developing a PowerPoint or video with some sort of audio component. And at the end of the day, sometimes students are just better storytellers verbally than they are in the act of writing. And so this gives them the opportunity to tell their story in their own voice and kind of shows their own personality as well. So like I said, these lead-in videos will kind of just give you some background to the classroom concepts that we're going to talk about. And I digress. And here is the classroom concepts for the personal narrative assignment. Hi guys, this is the video to kind of walk you through the first major project we're going to have in this class, which is writing to share experiences, otherwise known as the personal narrative. Now, one thing that I do want to address regarding this project is that you will have one of two options that you can utilize when developing this assignment. So with all of the projects that we're going to work on this semester, you will always have the option to write an essay. Since this is a composition class, the essay is always on the table since it is a form of writing. But at the same time, I know that some of you are able to articulate and express yourselves in different ways, and sometimes writing isn't the strongest avenue to do that. And so for this first project, the secondary option or alternative option, if you want to do it, is a PowerPoint or Prezi with an audio voiceover. Why I like this option as well as an essay is because it allows you to incorporate images from your own life, and then it gives you the opportunity to utilize your voice in telling your personal narrative and telling your story. And so these are the two options you can equip if you would like to use them for this particular project. One thing to keep in mind, students sometimes ask, do we have to do both of these? No, it's just one or the other. So if you decide to do the essay, you can produce the essay, which should be a minimum of 750 words. However, I do not provide a ceiling for that. Sometimes students have taken this project and they've gone up to 4,000 words, which to me is a double-edged sword, because it's great in one hand that they really took the essay and they ran with it. But then at the same time, I'm like, I got to read a 3,000, 4,000 word essay, which is perfectly fine, because typically when students write or develop that much of a personal narrative, they were really involved and detailed and thorough in talking about their story. And then with the PowerPoint presentation, what's nice about that, or the Prezi with audio, is that you can utilize those images from your life. You can talk about those things. And if you decide to go in that direction, the PowerPoint should be a minimum of 10 minutes with your audio voiceover. And as with the essay, there is no maximum to how many slides you want. Typically, I see PowerPoints that are anywhere from 10 to 15 slides with about a minute of voiceover per slide, but obviously you can go well over that if you'd like. Someone who has influenced you or impacted you either positively or negatively. And why I say positively or negatively is because when we learn from some of these things in life, it's not always the best of circumstances. I've had students who've written about being children of divorce, who've written about addiction, who've written about abuse, who've written about gang violence. And a lot of times those are the biggest contributors to what they've learned in life. Other times I've had students who've written about people who have been motivation or role models for them, whether that's their parents, their siblings, their teachers, their coaches, their bosses, their mentors. And those would be options that you could also write about as well. You can also write about a task or objective or experience that you found or still find especially difficult or challenging. So some students have written about their transition from one country or culture to another. I have many ELS or students who were not born in this country, along with myself, that talk about some of the challenges or differences that they've seen from one culture or another. I've had students who've talked about gender identity or sexual identity, and a lot of times it's the discussion of either coming out or they haven't come out yet, or they're still trying to figure things out. And one thing that I do want you to know is that these projects are an opportunity for you to open up. I will be the only person reading or listening to them, so you do not need to worry. One thing that I often tell my students is if you would like to be vulnerable and you would like to be open, I am by no means in a place of judgment. This is a place that is safe and secure. So if there's anything that you would like to address or open up about or write or produce, by all means, feel free. I've had students actually express to me how glad and positive they were that this was an opportunity for them to write about things or talk about things that they haven't been able to express to anyone else before. So that door is open for you as well. You can write or develop the project around the origins of your current attitudes about life. So one of the things that I often address is how your sort of perspective was shaped. Were you coming from a religious family? Do you have strong ties to, say, a police family or families that have dealt with police brutality? Have you come from areas of the world where you have less privilege and you see things from a different perspective? How were your attitudes or perspective or point of view shaped? And then lastly, an activity, affinity, or passion that has influenced you. So this is where I've had students who've written about their connection to gaming. Many students who game in this current culture devote a lot of time and has shaped their means to how they see the world. I've had students write about their favorite shows or anime and how that sort of has influenced their perspective on things. I've had students address aspects of sports, music, entertainment, creativity, their jobs, and those are the things that they're passionate about. And so if that is something that you would like to develop or work on, please feel free to do so. Now, one thing I also want to address as well is that on Blackboard on the left-hand side, and I'll show you this as well in the other video when I go through the assignments, is the area for the Writing to Share experiences. And in this area, you will find different student examples, whether they're PowerPoints or the essay examples. Please feel free to reference them. They are there for you to get more insight about the project. Additionally, I have the PowerPoints that you need to get further insight about this project as well. And as always, if you do have questions or concerns, please feel free to email me or text me or set up a conference with me. And if you would like, I can walk through the draft with you as well. One thing to keep in mind is that just get the project or essay started.